Hey folks, welcome back. I'm David and we're here in my shop where I build E-War guitars. This is going to be episode number 13 in the series where I'm building this guitar right here. And the series where I'm learning how to use my CNC machine. The CNC machine work is all done, but if you'd like to catch up on those videos, you can watch me fumble around and make some mistakes and learn how to use the CNC machine. I'll go ahead and post a link to the entire video series up top here. Then when you're done with that, come on back because we're going to move on to the next stage with this right now. And in this stage, we're going to get ready to start finishing this guitar. So we're going to have to hand sand the whole thing. I've already hand sanded it to 120. Now I want to continue on. I want to sand it with 180 grit and then 220 grit. And that should get us to the place where we can start putting some finish on this thing. And the finishes I'm going to use for this, we're going to start with the sealer. I use Simtec sealer. This is a polyester sealer and it's a catalyzed finish. So get a little bit of this catalyst in it, but it makes it's a super rock hard, solid finish. You can sand to where it feels like glass when you're done. And it's very durable and a really good finish. We're going to start off with that. Then on the body, I'm going to go ahead and prime the body. This is a House of Color. It's a DTS primer sealer. I want to do that just to get a coat of black on there. Because then on top of that, we're going to spray this candy apple red color, and it's a Deltron. It's a PPG paint, Deltron. Candy apple red. So anyway, we're going to spray that on top. Then on top of the whole thing, we're going to spray this Tamco's Euro Clear, which is an amazing gloss clear I love to use. Excellent products. All these are really excellent products. I've used many different ones, and these are some great products. But so in this video, we're going to start with sanding. I got to hand sand this. I'm done with the machine sanding on it. I believe everything from here on out is going to be by hand. And we're going to sand everything, the entire body and neck, and we're going to move on and start the sealing process. Anyway, let me get set up over there in the corner where I do my sanding, and we're going to get going with that right now. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do. This is pretty basic, just hand sanding stuff. I like to use some different products. I get these foam blocks. They're automotive bodywork tools. They're basically foam blocks, and I got this foam rod right here. They're fairly stiff, but you can wrap sandpaper around them and you can fit into different shapes with them. And these got a little bit of flex to them, so I could kind of sand around the corners and everything. But my goal in this is, like I said a second ago, this has all been sanded. The neck and the body has been sanded up to 120 grit, and I want to get it to 220. But I want to do it by hand. I have both the face and the back of the body sanded off. I sanded it with a DA sander, this guy right here. So I know it's all flat and it feels very smooth. I feel no variations, no ripples or anything. What I want to really do is I want to not only bring this up a couple more courses of grit, I also want to go around all these edges. You know, this has been routed around. And I'd sanded it initially after I cut it out on the CNC machine. I sanded it with my oscillating belt sander and my spindle sander. And then I routed the whole thing. And so I've got basically tool marks. And like right here, you can't see it, but I could feel some ripples. I probably had some ripples going through here with my spindle sander. So then when I cut it with the router, the ripples are in there. Like I said, very faint, but I could feel them. And I know with gloss clear going on here, you're going to see them too, especially with that dark candy apple red going on there in gloss clear. You're going to see ripples all around this whole thing. So in this process, I'm basically going to just hand sand it and get everything as smooth as I possibly can, get out any ridges that might be left, any tool marks or variations, and get it just where it feels silky smooth everywhere, and I can't feel any variation in the finish. And that's what we're going to do. And I believe I'm going to start with, I've done 120, so I think I'm going to jump to 180. Although, depending on how it goes, I may drop back and hit 122. So, but anyway, we're going to do the neck too and get that all done. And anyway, so that's what we're going to do. So that's a downdraft table I made that I'm working on right now that's hooked into my vacuum system. And it works really well. It'll keep that dust down and out of the way. That is if you turn it on. And I didn't turn it on in this one, so you can see all the dust piling up around it. So hand sanding is a huge part of guitar building. In fact, it's a huge part of any kind of woodworking. And a really good hand sanding job could be the difference in between just a so-so looking finished product and one that looks really good and clean and crisp and sharp. So hand sanding, though it's a lot of work, it is definitely necessary. So I started, when I started this hand sanding process, I was already at 120, and I thought I could skip to 180, but I just couldn't. So that purple sheet I have there, you see, is a 150. So I went 150, 180, and then 220. Because skipping grits just ain't worth it. It's just too much work. So I'm just very carefully trying to go over every last little piece. And you know, you could feel as much with your hands as you can see with your eyes. As a matter of fact, I think you could feel more with your hands when you're doing this than you could actually see with your eyes. Your hands really pick up a sense of unevenness or any little imperfection or whatever that's in the wood. And so I'm just going through it. I'm using those different pads I showed you a minute ago, and just very carefully going over every last little piece. I even use my chisels and scrapers when I get up around the neck. I don't know if I've got any footage to show that, but I make sure the glue is all clean and all my sharp corners are coming together nice and tight and straight and everything. And then I'm just going through it and being very careful and sanding every last little thing. And if it's stained or just cleared wood like that neck, I'm absolutely certain to go only with the grain. Okay, so I've got it all completely sanded down to 220 grit, and it's all feeling good. I'm not feeling any little ripples or anything. So when I do this, I like to then go through and I wipe it down with some naphtha, just to give me another good look. Now the body's getting painted, so I don't really need to worry too much about scratches, but I like to, just as good practice, I want to go through and wipe it down. This will show up scratches really good. I want to get around these edges, around the edges of the neck. That's always a tricky spot to sand right. I want to make sure I got any glue out of there that might be in the way. And it looks like I got it pretty good. This naphtha will also clean any sawdust out of the pores and open up the pores a little bit. So I think it's just good practice to do this, even if you're painting. Which, of course, the neck we're gonna just do clear, because I think that's gonna look pretty good in the clear. You can kind of get a little taste of it when I put the naphtha on it like that. Boy, I think that neck's gonna be killer looking. Dark and rich. Yeah, I think that's gonna look good. So that purple heart really richens up when you get a little stuff on there. Beautiful. Okay. I'm gonna get set up and we're gonna get going with some of this here Simtec sealer. I think it looks pretty good. I think it's ready to go. Okay, so I'm getting ready to spray on this Simtec sealer. I got everything masked off. Of course, you saw I sanded it up to 220. Now that it's hanging here and I got my rubber gloves on, I'm going to wipe it down once again with some naphtha and let it dry good and then get spraying away. So what I do is this is a little paint mixing cup I get from the auto paint supplier. I'm going to fill it probably 3/4 of the way with the Simtec sealer and put about a half a cap full of the catalyst in there. It calls for 2% catalyst, so I'm going to dump about a half a cap full in there. And that amount, probably 6 or 7 ounces of this stuff, ought to be more than enough to coat this. I'll spray sort of a lightish tack coat and just get a coat on there, and then I'll crank up the gun a little bit and spray it. Probably 2 more coats, I would think. It just depends on how far the stuff's going to go. And this is the gun I use for this stuff. This is just a Husky air gun. It's a spray gun. It's got a 2.2 millimeter tip in it, which is a pretty large tip. It's for spraying thicker stuff, and the Simtec sealer is fairly thick. So anyway, you know, when you can thin this Simtec sealer down, I believe it's with acetone. You can go up to 10% acetone, but I normally don't do that. I just spray it on just as it comes, and so far it's worked out pretty good. But anyway, so I'm gonna get this thing wiped down again, mix up a little Simtec, get it in the gun, and we're gonna start spraying away. Oh, and notice too, I've got a Tyvek suit on. I've got my safety glasses that I've used for spraying this stuff before, and I've got my respirator too. This Simtec sealer is some potent stuff, and it's sticky as hell too. It gets onto everything, so I cover up good. I cover my clothes good and everything. Sometimes when I'm painting or doing clears, I don't wear my Tyvek suit. But definitely with this stuff, you want to get all the gear on. It's got a hood on it too, and I'll pull up the hood too because I don't want to be washing this stuff off my head later. Anyway, so let me get out some naphtha and start wiping this thing down and get ready to go. So I always like to wipe it down just one last time just before I spray it, after I've got my rubber gloves on and my suit on and I'm done messing with the thing. And I know I'm kind of crazy about that, but I just want to make sure there's no oily or sweaty fingerprints or anything, or any glue residue from the tape or anything, so I clean it one more time. I'm just mixing up that Simtec sealer. You know, it looks a little pink in the thing, but once you mix that catalyst in there, it almost turns to a bit of an amber hue in the cup, and it really gives it kind of a nice, you know, sort of brings out the color of the wood. Not that it matters with the sealer, but it just does. Like I said, I did one quick tack coat and then 2 flow coats, and that amount I put in the gun was just exactly enough. Okay, so it is the next day. I let this cure out overnight. It's perfectly dry now. It takes several hours. I don't know exactly how many, but I always let it sit for probably at least 6 hours. But it's been overnight, and I'll tell you what, I'm very pleased with the way that Simtec sealer laid on there. I used, I think I already mentioned it, a gun with a 2.2 millimeter tip on it, and I think that's the key, because this is only the second time I've used that gun for the Simtec sealer. And before I was using a gun, I think it had a 1.4 millimeter tip, which it doesn't lay it out as flat as that larger tip. And I sprayed it at 45 PSI too, by the way. But I'm really pleased. I mean, it's got its orange peel and stuff in it, and I've got to sand it, but it really laid out there nice and flat. And I think it's really looking good. So I've got to definitely do another coat. That grain in the walnut is got some fairly deep areas in it, so I'm going to have to definitely coat it again. But this body, that soft maple, that body, I mean, I could almost get away, I think, with sanding this, and it would be ready to go. But anyway, I'm going to give the whole thing another coat. But before I do that, I've got to sand this, and this is what I'm going to use. I use Super Aslix. That is ASSILEX, and this is I think they call it the Ocean, they go by colors. But anyway, it's a 360 grit basically, and it's a sanding, it's like a fabric sheet, and this is a double sheet. So each one of these sheets, it makes 2 of them, and it is like really great stuff. It's very flexible, and I'll use it either with this interface pad, which is kind of a foam pad you could stick it to, and it helps you, it helps it conform to the curves and all that type of thing. Or for the flat areas, I'll put it on this guy right here, which is sanding block. And it's got this micro Velcro stuff going on. But anyway, it is awesome paper or sanding sheets. And they're expensive, but I promise you they're really worth the money because it gives you just an excellent result. And it's very fast too. It's much faster than regular sandpaper. So anyway, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get going sanding on this thing, and we're going to get it ready for the next round of Simtec sealer. So one other thing I failed to mention about the advantages of this Super Aslix paper is it's a dry sanding system. You don't introduce any water to that guitar body, which can cause problems. You know, that water can go down in those holes, the drill holes and everything, and sort of swell the wood right around the edge of the hole, and you could inadvertently cut right through the sealer and get right down to the raw bare wood, which is something you don't want to have happen. So just a really good product. I recommend you give it a try if you haven't yet. The nice thing too, you see I keep that cloth right next to me, and as I'm sanding, I'll just wipe it off on that cloth, and it cleans the sandpaper right out. It gets all the dust particles out of the sandpaper, the buildup out of the sandpaper, and it cleans it up, and it's like a fresh new sheet again. So I'm not getting absolutely crazy about sanding this coat since it's getting another coat on top of it, but I'm doing my best to remove all the orange peel, and I want to get this coat down as thin as possible without actually breaking through it. But there'll be little dimples and little depressions and stuff, tiny ones, in this layer of finish I'm not going to worry about sanding out at this point. And we'll get that on the next coat. So after the next coat, I will sand it till it's like glass and get it ready for the paint and the clear to go on. And once again, I'll just wipe the whole thing down with naphtha, just to be sure. And then just start spraying away in the exact same method I did on the first round. Well, folks, I think we'll leave it about there for now. So I got 2 good rounds of Simtec sealer on here, about 2.5 coats each round, and I think I'm really covered well. It's looking really smooth, very little orange peel. We're going to sand that out and get it ready for the next round, which is going to be a coat of black primer on the body. Then we're going to do some candy apple red on top of that. I think it's going to look really cool. Well, I hope somebody got a little something out of that. I'm really enjoying doing these videos, and I love making guitars. Anyway, we'll catch you all in the next time. In the meantime, God bless you, and you all have a wonderful week.